And yeah, huge thanks to Dr. Shireen for taking the time out for us. What I'll do is I'll quickly go ahead and introduce Vegan Greens, what we've been doing, and then Shireen, I'll pass it over to you. So just give me 1 second as I share my screen. All right, perfect. Can everyone see it? Yeah. Okay, great. So about us, Vegan Greens is a very young special interest group that's affiliated to the Green Party of England and Wales. We're an intersectional group that believes in ethical veganism. And I think, long story short, without reading the entire definition, ahimsa is the core of what we believe in, which basically means that all beings are equal and no one should subjugate the other. Our aims are threefold. One is to advocate for vegans' rights, both internally and externally. Number two is to work with elected leaders at the local and the national levels to pass vegan-friendly policies. And third is to expand the party's base of support by appealing to vegan and vegan-curious folks who are not members of the Green Party. Quick updates on our Vegan for January campaign. This is the second year that we've been running this. This year, we've got 20 participants, and our Green Party CEO, Harriet Lamb, is one of our participants. So I'm hoping that, Megan, we should get an update from her this week on how she's doing. And also like a video recording of her saying, I'm doing Vegan for January. So that'll make a nice post for everyone. Huge props to our community for being very encouraging and supportive of everyone who's trying to go vegan this year, or at least in January. Hopefully, they'll continue that streak throughout the rest of the year. But the buddy system's been a great hit. People have really enjoyed that. They formed some really close friendships. And all through this month, we've been sharing recipes, ideas, and tips with everyone who's trying to go vegan to give them like a nice support network on WhatsApp. We've had 3 live sessions so far. This is actually a third one. We've got one more planned, thanks to Dr. Shireen for taking some more time out this week. And they've all been around health and veganism. Everything is being recorded and shared to our YouTube channel. We'll publish those details at the end of the session. This month, we're raising money for 3 charities. One is Animal Free Research UK, which promotes methods for animal-free testing. Second is El Elna Alak, which is a Gaza-based charity which is run by Palestinians, and their latest project is to create a desalination plant in north of Gaza. And the third one is the Vegan Compassion Group. They actually help an orphanage in Sudan where they provide vegan food to orphans in need over there. So anything that folks can donate, please take a look at the URL over here. We'll publish this when we post the video online, and we'll also put this link down in the chat as soon as I'm done with the introduction. As soon as you donate, you'll be entered into our raffle draw. And thank you so much to Dr. Shireen Kassam for donating one of her books as one of the prizes, and also for organizing 2 other prizes through friends and colleagues of hers, Karen Lee and Dr. Rebecca Jones. So we're grateful to all 3 of them for taking a time out and also donating their books for this really noble cause. On to today's topic. Dr. Shireen is a consultant hematologist at King's College London, King's College Hospital London, and a visiting professor at the University of Winchester, specializing in lymphoma treatment and plant-based nutrition. She's also the founder of Plant-Based Health Professionals in the UK, a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to providing evidence-based education on whole food, plant-based nutrition, and lifestyle medicine. I approached Dr. Shireen through her account on Instagram, very randomly in November of last year, and she responded to us. I had no idea she was a member of the Green Party, but got to know that she actually is, and then she joined our chat. And ever since then, she's been extremely helpful in, obviously helping plan these events and also getting us really important contacts that we've been able to leverage for other events throughout Vegan for January. So really appreciate you taking the time out, Dr. Shireen. I shall turn this over to you now.
Great. Thanks very much. And it's really great to be part of this group. And yeah, really happy that I'm a member of a party who's recognizing the benefits of being vegan and eating a plant-based diet. Yeah, both in and outside my NHS role, I really try and bring in the benefits of a plant-based diet. I just as a bit of background, if people are interested, I became vegan in 2013 and it was for the animals, of course, but then, having taught myself around the kind of science around plant-based eating, it seemed that nobody within the healthcare profession, at least in the UK, was really discussing all the benefits up for grabs when sort of transitioning away from eating animals to eating more plants. And most of my learning and teaching was I was getting from the US, from some great organizations like PCRM and Plantrition Project and some of the US and Canadian pioneers. And I thought, oh, it's about time that we started trying to get this knowledge and expertise into the NHS. And so that's what I've been doing through my organisation, Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, over the last, since 2018 we launched actually. And I think from going from an organisation that was sort of mainly and uniquely speaking just to vegans, we have, successfully over the last few years been able to spend our time speaking to healthcare audiences and working directly with NHS, whether it's hospitals or some of the NHS leaders. It's a bit easier and more normalised to be talking about at least plant-based eating within the NHS. It's a bit more tricky talking about veganism. We're very far away from being a vegan healthcare service because animals are seem to be so part and parcel of what we do when it comes to research, drug development. And I think that sort of brings us to the first question, which is around medicines and the fact that, well, I mean, no medicines are truly vegan because we still test medicines on animals as part of the testing process. And that's why it's great that you're donating to Animal Free Research UK because there's what tried and tested models for testing medicines and other medical technologies without using animals. But I'd say that the NHS has a duty and has also, openly says that it supports inclusivity, diversity, and we know that veganism is a protected characteristic. So, you have the right to request vegan alternatives to medications if and when they're available. And that's the thing, not every medication is available in a vegan version, as it were. So the best thing is to ask. So if you're in the hospital and you're trying to have a vegan medicine, then it's best to ask to speak to the ward pharmacist. Every ward will have a pharmacist attached to them, and then speak to them. And they do come round and speak to patients, and they'll be able to counsel you as to what the options are. If you're not having any luck finding the right people in the hospital to speak to, then the way to sort of escalate that is through the patient advice and liaison service, which is details for how to contact them are always available on the hospital website, or ask the matron on the ward for how you contact PALS, as it's known as. I think when you're at the GP surgery, most GPs have a pharmacy attached or nearby, and they're going to be much more knowledgeable and have access to a database of how the formulation of various medications and alternatives. I have to say, doctors as such are probably not the right people to necessarily go to for that on an individual level. But then I guess the broader question of how we tackle the problem systemically, I think is a tricky one, really. I think it needs a real sort of grassroots pressure campaign, along with sort of, key allies in the policy and government's space, and it needs a proper strategy, certainly within the UK, to be able to tackle this, because we know sort of animal testing for cosmetics and things like that has been successfully challenged, and I guess we need that same degree of sort of advocacy and campaigning and championing for medicines. So yeah, I haven't got an easy answer, but I do know that the Vegan Society are great at answering those questions as well. And yeah, I think pharmacists should be able to access information on an individual level, and then if the group wants to strategize and champion a campaign around vegan medicines, then all well and good. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else in the group has anything more to say about that. No. Okay, well, I'll get on to question two then as a completely different one, but yeah, around vitamin D. I think the sort of false narrative that's often put out there is that vegan diets are deficient in vitamin D, and that's another reason to eat things like eggs and fishes because of the vitamin D. But ultimately, all diet patterns need to plan for vitamin D supplementation if sun exposure is inadequate, because the main route for us to form vitamin D is through exposure to sunlight on our skin. And for us in the UK, the NHS recommends that we all take a supplement regardless of diet pattern between October and March. And for certain skin colours, like my own, and working in an environment where I'm always covered up with no natural sunlight, I do take vitamin D all year round. So I think so. The answer to the question is no, that you can't really store up enough to get you through those winter months. You do need to supplement, and that is the NHS recommendation. And then, of course, one knows to choose a vegan vitamin D, which is available. Rather than usual vitamin D3 from lanolin, we can obtain it from lichen. And not that I am advertising per se, but the Vegan Society's VeGn tablet is what I take as my supplement, and it has vitamin D in it, along with B12, iodine, selenium, and a few other extras that's useful to have, although not necessary for everybody. And it sort of covers all bases, and something that's cheap and, for me, palatable at least. So.
Follow-up question on that. So the veg one supplement that you end up taking, is that the only supplement that you take for vitamin D as well?
Yeah, it's got 800 international units, and the UK only recommend 400 anyway, so it's sort of above and beyond. And so, yeah, and I've had my vitamin D tested once, and it's absolutely fine. Because you might think that somebody of dark skin might need higher, but it seemed fine for me. So, yeah, I do.
Great, thank you. All right, so the third question is, can you overdose on B12 supplements, or is it excreted out as it's a water-soluble vitamin?
Yeah, I think this person's answered their question really themselves. It is water soluble, and although sometimes people on supplements will have higher than the normal range results when they get things tested, I'm not aware of any toxicity associated with vitamin B12. And the thing is, I guess if you do get it tested and it's over the sort of normal range, then you can decide to space out your supplements or have a break and get it retested. So you can personalize it a bit, but ultimately I don't think there's a big deal about taking higher doses, because, as you say, it is water soluble and usually excreted.
Perfect. Question four, can vegans be vitamin K deficient?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I guess the answer is can be if you're eating just a diet of Pringles and Diet Coke. But vitamin K, I mean, there's two forms. So K1 is found in leafy greens. So as long as you're eating a good range of veggies, you should be fine. People talk about concerns around K2. which is found in animal source foods, but also fermented foods like natto, for example, if you're in a vegan diet. But I think, and sometimes vitamin K2 is recommended for people with low bone mineral density as a adjunct to take with vitamin D and other sort of bone-related medications. But I think ultimately we believe, although more research is required, that the body can convert vitamin K1 to K2. The gut bugs are important in some of that conversion, but it also happens in our cells as well. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason to be worrying about vitamin K, assuming you are consuming a otherwise mostly whole food plant-based diet with lots of green veggies.
Great, thank
Mhm.
you for that. Sorry, we just got a comment from Michael.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, and then question five first, I guess. Oh, should I do, yeah, Michael's question about, yeah, selenium. Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky, isn't it? In that, any nutrient's going to vary in food depending on the soil it's grown in, the growing conditions, the climate, all of these things, the type of farming, the type of farming. So, I think you're right. I mean, I think we're never going to know for certain how much selenium in that one or two Brazil nuts you've taken from a particular packet or where it's grown around the world because we don't know in detail about this level in the soil. The VeGn tablet does have selenium in it. It's sort of precautionary. I think the whole VeGn formulation is kind of precautionary in that it covers all bases, assuming that people are not 100% compliant, inverted commas, to a perfectly healthy diet. So yeah, I mean, I think if people are taking the VeGn tablet, you'll be getting selenium in a supplement. But I mean, I think Brazil nuts aren't the only source. I think whole grains and other nuts will have small amounts of its selenium as well. And I think you don't need to be taking it every single day the exact same amount. But yeah, I mean, I think selenium can be part of your supplementation if you need to. But yeah. Did you see the study? Agree with the guidance? I'm not entirely sure which study, but I mean, I actually did my PhD in selenium actually back in the day. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it really depends where the food is grown and the soil selenium. And there is a relatively narrow therapeutic range, so you can get toxicity from too much as well, but that's not a genuine problem for vegans.
Cool. Thanks for that. So I'll just read question 5 aloud
Mm.
for the recording. So how do we fight the misinformation from USDA standards? They recently inverted the food pyramid, also because the US has way too much influence over Europe.
Yes, I know. I mean, it's obviously been causing a bit of a storm on social media. I don't know if anyone's seen my article on it. I'll share it. I write on Substack, and I did a quick article over the weekend about my thoughts on that. Uh, I mean, I think it was sort of predictable, but hugely disappointing and a real step backwards to see not only the kind of prominence of meat and dairy on the pyramid, but also the inaccuracy of information around vegan diets. So um, they under the vegan vegetarian section, they've listed a whole array of nutrients that are deficient in a vegan diet, of which most of them is not true. They've listed things that are abundant in a plant-based diet, and apparently they did the analysis by modeling a vegetarian diet that just removes eggs and dairy, but doesn't then replace it with things like fortified plant milks or, other sources of nutrients that you might find in milk and dairy. So it's a complete nonsense. I mean, I think that, like written in the article, I think there are a couple of silver linings. I mean, nobody actually follows their country-based dietary guideline. So in the UK, less than 1% follow the all recommendations of the Eat Well guide. So our adherence in general to these is pretty poor. So I don't think it's going to suddenly change how people are eating because we know that people's eating habits are more dictated by their food environment, their cultural and social norms, what's affordable, accessible, all those things. However, it's a bit concerning around the kind of procurement side for things like schools, hospitals, prisons, etc. Um, Difficult to know. I don't think that it's going to really influence us here in the UK. You know, we've had some very common sense guidelines. A lot of what is published by the Scientific Advisory Committee in Nutrition here in the UK is very sensible. I don't know if anyone read their recent analysis on plant milks. You know, it very clearly states at the beginning that cow's milk is not required in the diet of children or adults. So, you know, we've got some very science-backed government documents, you know, whether we stick to that or agree with it or whatever, or can persuade people of the need that we don't need dairy and meat is a different matter. But I think our guidance is pretty solid and that's not going to change. We're doing a bit of work to try and sort of champion an update to the Eat Well guide because in this interview sort of 10 years since it's been published. Clearly, the Eat Lancet Planetary Health Diet has come on board, and more country-based guidelines are recommending less meat, less dairy. And I don't know what we do about the US. It's a number of list of issues that is wrong with US policy at the moment, isn't it? So, I haven't got an answer to that.
Thanks. You mentioned prisons, which is why I've included the next question, but it is a policy question, so feel free to just address it lightly if
Yeah.
this isn't really in your wheelhouse. But the question is, how is veganism addressed in state institutions such as prisons and care homes? I'd like to avoid both, but the latter one might not be possible too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because I don't know the answer specifically around that. I think, you know, they do have to provide vegan meals. I think care homes, I think I wrote in the response to the question, there's a great charity called V for Life that does a lot of great work to ensure that care home menus cater for vegans. I mean, ultimately, care homes and prisons should be championing what we know to be healthy, nutritious, and sustainable, which equals at least a plant-rich diet or a predominantly plant-based diet. So really, plant-based meals should be readily available, regardless of how one identifies in terms of vegan or not vegan. I think, you know, ultimately prisoners do have the choice, but we do know from people who have had served in prison for various reasons that it can be difficult to access vegan meals, and I think it does need some you know, initiatives through vegan campaigning to make sure that all institutional dining is, you know, keeps up with the science and like schools and hospitals, they serve what's healthy and nutritious. So yeah, I know you probably want, I hope you're saying you want to avoid prisons and care homes, but yes, we all do.
That's how I interpreted it, but yes, but yeah, keeping up with scientific advice and with the Equality Act, certainly. There's a question from Eve.
Mhm.
Is unprocessed red meat dangerous for health?
Yeah. So I think, you know, with nutrition, there's no sort of black and white when it comes to sort of health. I think the key things to think about when you're thinking about the health impacts of a certain food or beverage is the amount. So, like with everything in medicine, there is usually a dose response. You know, a small bit of alcohol is going to have less of a negative impact than, you know, drinking lots every day, for example. And that's the same with red meat, that there is a dose effect. So you certainly see that people consuming more than a sort of 100 grams a day are going to, that's associated with negative health impacts compared to people who are eating less than sort of 40 grams a day. So there's always going to be a dose effect. So less is definitely better. The Eat Lancet Commission that, you know, devised the planetary health plate do state that there probably isn't any safe limit, but nonetheless, if somebody's going to eat a small amount in the quantities that they've suggested is safe for people and planet, which is a portion, like a small burger patty worth of red meat a week, it's probably not going to have a negative impact because when you think about nutrition, you have to think about instead of what and with what. So if you're if you're taking something out of the diet, what are you having instead? And we absolutely know that if instead of eating red meat, you decide to eat um, beans, nuts, even fishes, you'll be improving your health outcome. And then, of course, it's with what? If you're having your small amount of red meat with a big salad, lots of cruciferous veg, etc., is going to have less of a negative impact than if you're eating it with a white refined bun with lots of mayonnaise and ketchup and your diet, your full fat Coke or whatever. So you basically have to think about the whole dietary pattern. And I think an overall healthy dietary pattern with lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, and a small amount of red meat is probably neither here nor there. Do we need it? No. Can we do better? Yes. Is it terrible for the environment? Yes. So, we can make better choices. And I think you can say that around, and that's kind of how I talk about things like dairy and eggs as well. It's a, you can consume them. It's not going to be terrible for your health, but you can absolutely make a better choice for health and the planet. And then, of course, the animals as well.
Mhm. Great. So there are a few more questions on different topics, but for now I want to jump to Linda's question because it's related to what you were speaking about
Mm.
just then. So Linda asks, it still seems though that there's a long way to go before the risks of unprocessed meat are widely acknowledged. What can happen to change that?
Mm, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? And I mean, I'm more worried about the fact that we still serve processed meat, which really is a group one carcinogen and associated with a significantly increased risk of cancer. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. It's been 10 years since the WHO has classified processed meat as a direct cause of cancer. And so, although people say it's as bad as smoking and all the rest, it's clearly not because although the strength of evidence is just as strong as for tobacco smoking, the absolute risk is less. So, we know that 1 in 2 people smoking cigarettes will die of a smoking related condition, and you'll shorten your life by 10 years if you smoke cigarettes. But the degree of risk is not as high as for processed meat. And again, it's a dose effect, isn't it? So if you eat it like once a week or whatever, you're probably not going to be doing that much harm. But having said that, when it comes to institutional dining, we shouldn't be serving it in schools, hospitals, prisons, and like with other carcinogens, one should have a warning so people actually know. So again, I think we really do have to be lobbying for a change. But I mean, my experience on the ground is that we haven't really got the support of the nutrition professionals who will say, well, a small bit here and there, and if that's the only thing people are going to eat, then it's better than not. And so we know that we have to bring the nutrition profession on board to champion a significant change in policy away from being able to actually serve things like processed meat to children and hospital patients and so forth. So that is certainly a bit of work that we do and champion, certainly in the hospital space. And I think, nobody wants the pushback everyone always states is that, choice shouldn't be limited. So, I think more and more, I think we have to think about defaults and making plant-based meals the default, using those behavioral strategies that have been demonstrated in studies to help people make that better choice rather than, focusing in on removing things from the menu. If you position the healthy plant-based option front and foremost and make it attractive, delicious, incentivize it in some way, then more and more people will choose that. And I think things like processed meat will sort of hopefully fall away. And I do think, there is a role here for all the plant-based meat alternatives. I mean, I'm not somebody who ever ate bacon or sausages or whatever, but I think that they are now so realistic that it is easier to sort of persuade people to at least try these and swap them in for the actual processed meat. So hopefully that will help.
Thank you. That's very good advice. So the next question is about iron absorption. Is it
Mm.
true that the body doesn't absorb iron very well from spinach? And if that is true, then what is the best way to get iron from a plant-based diet?
Yeah, well, we have a hopefully you'll agree we have a really good fact sheet on iron on our website. So do take a look and read the detail of it. So I mean, I think it's not spinach just per se, but I mean, it's just iron within plant foods is less what we term as bioavailable, so less well absorbed than iron found in meat. Now, that's not necessarily a negative thing. So your body is much more able to regulate the amount that's absorbed from plants, whereas the heme iron in animal sourced foods is just automatically absorbed whether you need it or not. And more is not necessarily better. So, if you have too much iron and it's freely circulating, it is it can cause inflammation and oxidative stress. And actually, one of the mechanisms by which red meat is thought to be unhealthy is because of the heme iron. So yes to the answer about absorption, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. And we absolutely know that you can get sufficient iron from a plant-based diet if it's includes iron-rich foods and beans and greens, for example, and then adding a vitamin C to a meal that has a iron-rich food in it, which people do naturally anyway. Squeeze of lemon, vitamin C we found in red peppers and broccoli, and various things. So usual combinations used at meal times hopefully will help absorb the iron. So iron paired with vitamin C. One can use iron cast pans as a way of sort of increasing iron in the meal, and then not consuming teas and coffees. So the polyphenols in teas and coffees inhibit iron absorption. So leaving an hour at least before and after a meal before you drink tea and coffee is a good way of sort of enhancing iron absorption. And there started to be studies coming out, and this is a recent sort of development and a slight change in what we thought, and that over time, it seems that vegans probably adapt better than we thought to absorbing iron from plant-based foods. So it shouldn't be, it's not like a nutrient that one has to be too worried about, but like with any vegan diet, one needs to make sure you've got a variety of foods, including good sources of iron. And if I can quickly find our fact sheet, I'll pop it into the chat, which will give you some more tips.
I have the link. I have the
Oh,
link.
brilliant. Thanks very much. Great. Thank you.
Thanks for that. When Emily Angus spoke with us a couple of weeks ago about vegan nutrition, this was another point that she raised that was new to me about spacing coffee and tea with food for iron absorption.
Yeah.
One that has not changed my behavior yet, but it's good to know. It's interesting.
No, I know I'm not so good at that either, but there we go.
Great. Eve had a question about veganism and exclusion, asking whether a vegan diet might exclude anyone who follows religious law, religious dietary laws, and if so, what can be done about that to make it less exclusionary?
I am Muslim myself. I don't feel that vegan diet is excludes Muslims, in that we generally think of a certainly a plant-based diet is what we're talking about, is one of the most inclusive ways to deliver food, because it will be inclusive of all religious and ethical beliefs and can be allergen free as well. So it's much easier to be inclusive, I would suggest. So I don't see a problem specifically around Muslims. I know the Jain faith, they sometimes don't eat garlic and onions and those sort of things. So, but that's not specific to veganism as such. So I don't see an issue unless I'm missing something that I should be knowledgeable about for my own faith. But yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful as well. So the next question from Slido is it true that soy has hormones like estrogen and is not good for men?
So soya does have a plant form of estrogen, which has a different molecular structure to human estrogen. Um, so yes, so we call it a phytoestrogen. But actually, a lot of its positive benefits are related to the fact that they do contain phytoestrogens, and soya in general is a really healthy way to obtain plant sources of protein and also healthy fats. So there's absolutely no evidence that soya has a negative effect on male or female health or reproduction, and quite the opposite, that all studies in humans demonstrate that soya consumption of soya foods is beneficial to health. So cardiovascular health, reduces risk of a variety of different cancers, useful for sort of hot flashes in women around the menopause. So there's only good health outcomes for incorporating minimally processed soya foods. So, I mean, most of this misinformation about soya, A, was first generated by using supra sort of nutritional doses in animal studies, but also then propagated by the dairy industry. There's absolutely no doubt that dairy have sort of pushed this message around and kept these myths prevalent. I can't think of another food that has so many, untrue myths surrounding it. So there's absolutely no issue of eating soya. And, eating 2 or 3 portions a day, meaning like 80 grams or like 200 mils of a soya drink is absolutely fine. One doesn't want to overdo that or any food just because then you'll be crowding out the other variety. But as part of an otherwise varied diet, it's a great food to include.
Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear, as someone who eats a lot of soy every day. So there's one more question in the chat, and you've done a wonderful job of answering the questions from Slido. So if anyone in attendance does have more questions, do feel free to put them in the chat. So the final question so far is from Michael, who asks, do you have any preferred vegan cookbooks, including particular authors?
Oh gosh, I haven't prepared for that one. I'm not really a cookbook person, but who do I like? I mean, I like Vegan Risha. I don't know, I tend to just Google recipes if I think about it and then really not follow them. And very much a one pot person because everything needs to be quick. Who else? We've got some recommendations on our website as well. I don't mind the kind of Deliciously Ella cookbooks. Sarah Bentley, who is now working for Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, she's just brought out a great book called We Cook Plants. That's the Made in Hackney cookbook. So it's really got a range of different dishes from around the world, very inclusive. So that's nice. Yeah, I'm pretty bad at using recipe books though. I just yeah, make the same few dishes all the time.
Same. I like reading cookbooks, but then not cooking from them, just enjoying the pictures. So we have
So
another
actually,
question from Lydia.
sorry,
Sorry, go
on
ahead.
that note, what I'll do is the recipes link on Plant-Based Health Professionals and the Vegan Society. I'll put them as part of the post
Sounds
so
good.
people can always take a look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Prashant. There is another question from Linda, who asks, attitudes to veganism seem to swing from one criticism to another. For example, that it lacks protein or that it's ultra-processed. Now, though, there seems to be a new awareness of the importance of fiber, which can help swing opinion back our way. Are you often faced with questions about veganism falling out of favor or being just one of many food trends? There are a lot of big issues in that question. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we certainly face all of these criticisms in the healthcare space as well, despite the fact that we should know better as healthcare professionals. I think a lot of us still get our nutrition information from media and social media more and more. And I think, plant-based diet is often conflated with veganism, and they're not just one and the same, and one can design an unhealthy plant-based diet similar to an unhealthy omnivorous diet or one that's exceedingly healthy. So yeah, and I think all of these, I mean, I think the meat and dairy industry have done a great job at sort of throwing the ultra processed label at vegans when actually Veganism is what, still just 1 to 2% of the population, might be a bit higher, like 4%, and 96% of the UK public are omnivores or non-vegans, and we know that their diet is more than 50% ultra processed. So this isn't a criticism that is should be leveraged at vegans, but really the entire population has got a problem with over consuming ultra processed foods. And I think there's always a lack of nuance in that dialogue as well, because not all ultra processed foods are created equal. When you look at subgroups of the term ultra processed only really refers to the degree of processing of food. It doesn't tell you anything about the nutritional profile or the health outcomes related to eating that food. And when you do look into the different subcategories of ultra processed foods, the harms are specifically related to processed meat, which we've already discussed, sugar sweetened beverages, and then the broad bracket of foods that are high in fat, salt, and sugar. So, the cakes, pastries, fried foods, crisps, those sort of things, the things people would recognize as being unhealthy. But if you look at things like whole grain breads, whole grain cereals, plant milks, plant-based meat alternatives, there's no harm associated with those that's evident in the science that we've got currently. So again, it's easy to ignore that nuance and just put everything under one label, and then anything with additives in it, even if it's fortification, is considered an ultra processed food. Whereas we know fortification in lots of settings, like cereals fortified with iron, is a great way of getting iron into your kids, and there's no harm associated with that. So, and same about protein. I mean, it's a media. It's really been spun out of proportion with everyone putting a protein label on. But if you're meeting your calorie requirements in the UK, there's nobody who's protein deficient. And same with vegans, they're not protein deficient, assuming that you're incorporating beans and nuts and seeds in your diet. So, I mean, it's just a media fad, really. But I'm pleased to see the pendulum swing and people talking about fiber now and fiber maxing, and gut health is becoming much more popular. So maybe this is the time to champion more plant-based eating, I think. Yeah.
It's very encouraging to hear, and also frustrating that veganism is blamed for something that isn't its fault. There's a question from Eve, who says, soya formula is not recommended for babies under 6 months. Do you think that's outdated? Why is there no vegan alternative for those who can't breastfeed exclusively?
Yeah, no, very good question. I do think it's outdated. We have some advice under our kids section. There isn't actually a soy formula available in the UK, regardless of whether you want to use it or not. So Y Soy, which was the only one, which is vegetarian, not vegan, because of the vitamin D being still from lanolin, is now not available on the market. So there isn't really a soya formula. There is hydrolyzed rice and also another formula from Australia that people can buy. So there are alternatives for the rare occasions when mothers aren't able to breastfeed, because of course advice is always, regardless of diet pattern, that breastfeeding is best, and so that should just leave a small proportion of women who are unable to, for whatever reason, needing an alternative. Now if you think about all those babies that are allergic to cow's milk protein, they've they are uh, they use, or they have been recommended non-cow's formula, um, uh, non-cow's formula. So, and there haven't been any negative effects. And the evidence we have does not show any harms. The reason that there's this precautionary principle is used for soy formula is because of the phytoestrogen. So I know I said phytoestrogen fine, but at the doses you'd be giving to a baby whose only food is soya formula, there's worry that it'll be too much and will have, and a sort of feminizing effect to affect puberty, growth, etc. Except it's all hypothetical. There's nothing there in the science. So the last meta-analysis from 2014 showed no negative impact of using soya formula in healthy babies. Wouldn't use them in preterm babies, so healthy term babies. So we're in the process of actually updating that meta-analysis because, and just to hopefully be able to show that there really isn't a negative impact. So that there's what's the word? That there isn't consistency. So if a baby is cow's milk protein allergic, they're given a different formula. But if you're vegan, you're told, oh, it's risky. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that we're trying to champion and work with the BDA around sort of having some guidance.
Okay, that's interesting to know, and I didn't realize that there's so much negative propaganda about soya formula that I didn't realize that it actually could be healthy there. So the next question is whether there, generally speaking, there are any health concerns that you, as a health professional, encounter more in vegans than in non-vegans that we haven't spoken about so far.
Yeah, good question. And I will be covering this on Wednesday as a plug to turn up on Wednesday when I will be going into the data. So I think the area that we do need to be cognizant of and be honest with the data that's out there is around bone health. So we've had 4 studies now published, observational studies, demonstrating that people on meat-free diets have an increased risk of bone fracture. Of course, there's sort of nuance in the data, and it's usually women of lower body weight who may not be getting sufficient amounts of calcium, vitamin D, B12, and protein. So I think, there's particular reasons why certain subgroups may have less good bone health. But I think we do need some more research there. I do think we need to be honest with the data. But um, for me, it doesn't detract because the alternative omnivorous diet in comparison has higher rates of heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, overweight and obesity, inflammatory bowel disease, and the list goes on and on. So it's kind of balancing pros and cons and the biggest risks and the biggest killers of men and women, heart disease, strokes, uh, uh, consequences of overweight, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cancer are still better addressed through a healthy plant-based diet. But yeah, I'll be covering some of the data on Wednesday.
Looking forward to that. Thanks. That's the last question. There's one comment from Liz in the chat that you might want to respond to.
Mm.
Liz says, beyond phytoestrogens, soya formula has been found to be very high in aluminium, both from plant uptake from the soil and the extensive processing. And that aluminium is a neurotoxin. Do you have any thoughts
Mm.
on that?
Yeah, so I don't think I was aware that the soy formulas that were available before why soy was taken off the market had a particular issue with aluminium, and I might have to look that up. I mean, I don't disagree that certain, foods may be high in aluminium if it's in the soil, but I wasn't aware of that being an issue with soya formula. So I might have to just go away and look that up. I believe you if you say that, but it's not borne out. Then there hasn't been a borne out in the studies that have been done looking at children who've used soya formula. So I'm not certain about that that's a genuine health concern. I've never really discussed that as being a health concern from soya formula.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any final questions or comments? Thank you so much for responding so thoroughly to really a range of quick fire questions. But now is the final opportunity for anyone who hasn't had a chance to ask a burning question. Actually, it's not the final opportunity because, as you said, you will be back on Wednesday. But are there any additional questions before we close? I suppose I should say there was one more question on the Slido that really was folded into the point about what the NHS offers to vegans. Just find the wording of that questions. That question it was how can we put pressure on the NHS to provide vegan alternatives and make sure that such medicines are available, looking for ways to register complaints, etc. And you did answer that in part when you talked about going to a GP versus being in hospital. But are there any additional thoughts that you have on that question of how to change the NHS to make it more vegan friendly?
Yeah. So I guess we're doing a piece of work. Well, the first thing to say is that all hospitals will have vegan options. And so you do need to ask for it. Usually, it's on a separate special menu. And so every hospital have it. It's their duty to. They recognize that, veganism is a protected belief, and it's usually sort of under the umbrella of vegan, halal, all the rest. So, but there'll be options on that special menu for supposed special groups, as it were. What we're trying to do is make sure that there's plenty of plant-based meals on the main menu, such that it's not just vegans eating a healthy plant-based meal. And we've got an initiative called Plants First Healthcare. And for example, in my hospital, catered by Compass, there's plenty of plant-based options on the main menu. If you're not being given the options or the special vegan menu, then you should complain to PALS. I think some of the issue is that uh, sometimes individual dishes aren't always available if catering is delivered off from off-site, and certain meals are provided more often based on what more people are choosing. But there will always be a vegan option. Whether people understand the word vegan is a different matter. And so, staff are not necessarily all clued up, but the menus themselves, I can assure you, will have vegan options. So yeah, do ask. What was this? Whose husband who's a meat eater? Obviously, if it had to be me, I'd have asked for vegan, and no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think the choice is limited, and we're working to have more plant-based options. Hospital catering is just a minefield. Over 300 different hospital trusts, loads of caterers, different ways of delivering food. A lot of the hospitals have moved away from cooking on site, so your ability to respond, quickly to requests from patients is just not possible. And then the people who are serving and the food and talking to you about it, there's the food service hostesses. I mean, they're just not well trained. They're the lowest paid staff. They don't necessarily care, just want to get on with their work. And that's not said in a negative way. It's just that the facts. So, yeah, I think it's a difficult situation. I've seen it sort of firsthand as a medical professional, but also seeing family members in hospital and trying to ask for these things. I understand the challenges, but I think, as things, we just need to be more normal, don't we? And then greater the number of vegans, hopefully not in hospital, but nonetheless championing hospital food, is going to help our cause.
Great, thank you for that. So we all have a part to play, even though
I
it
think
is a
so.
systemic issue. Yeah, thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shireen Kassam, for sharing your time with us and your wisdom. And we're so grateful to have two sessions with you. So uh, please join us on Wednesday at 6:45, the same Zoom link, there will be a reminder that circulates beforehand, when you will be talking in a more formal capacity about your work with plant-based health professionals. So really looking forward to that session. Thank you again for supporting Vegan Greens. And please do join us in 2 days' time. And thank you everyone for your thoughtful questions, for your participation. And also thank you everyone who submitted questions on Slido, and who might be watching this recording. So thanks and good night, everyone.
Great, thanks everyone.
Thanks.